Welcome to Storytales. Please like this video and subscribe to Storytales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The morning light filtered through the kitchen blinds as Callum Rhodes poured coffee into his mug. 6:32. Exactly the same time as yesterday and the day before. He took comfort in routines that kept the world ordered when everything else threatened to spin out of control. "Daddy," a small voice called from the hallway. Callum turned to see Aurora Rory as he called her, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Her dark curls were tangled, and her unicorn pajamas rumpled. The sight of her melted something inside him that nothing else could touch. "Hey, kiddo, you're up early." He knelt down to her level, straightening the collar of her pajama top. "I had the dream again." Her voice was barely above a whisper. Callum pulled her into a hug. 6 years old and already carrying worries. "The one with the dark room?" She nodded against his shoulder. "Remember what I taught you?" he asked, pulling back to look in her eyes. "Find the exit. Look for light." She recited the words with the gravity of someone much older. "That's my girl." He smoothed her hair. "Want some breakfast? I can make those pancakes you like." Before she could answer, footsteps clicked across the hardwood floor. "Aurora, you're not dressed yet." Tessa's voice carried a sharp edge underneath its musical tone. She stood in the doorway, already dressed in a tailored blouse and pencil skirt, makeup perfect. "Mother will be here in 30 minutes. Callum felt Rory stiffen beside him. "We were just about to have breakfast," he said. That Tessa's lips thinned. "She needs to be presentable when Mother arrives. Not running around in pajamas like some wild thing. She's 6, Tessa, not interviewing for corporate." Callum kept his voice level, the way he'd learned to do during tense situations in his military days. "And that's exactly why she needs guidance." Tessa turned her attention to Rory. "Upstairs now. I've laid out your clothes on the bed." Rory looked up at Callum, her eyes pleading. "Go on, kiddo. We'll do pancakes tomorrow." He gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "I'm off work, remember? We got all weekend." After Rory trudged upstairs, Callum faced his wife. "Your mother doesn't need to inspect her like she's up for auction." "Don't start, Callum." Tessa busied herself with a coffee maker. "Mother's helping us. You've been distracted since coming back. Someone needs to maintain standards." "Standards?" Callum set his mug down harder than intended. "Your mother's been here 3 weeks. Rory's afraid to speak at dinner." Tessa didn't look at him. "She's learning manners. Something your upbringing clearly lacked." The familiar barb settled between them. Callum's childhood and foster care, always the card she played when backed into a corner. "I need to shower before work," he said instead of taking the bait. They'd had this fight too many times, and he'd learned when to disengage. As he headed upstairs, he paused outside Rory's room. Through the cracked door, he saw her struggling with the buttons on a stiff-looking dress he'd never seen before. "Need help, kiddo?" he asked softly. She nodded, relief flooding her face. As he helped with the buttons, he noticed finger-shaped bruises on her upper arm. "Rory," he said carefully, "how did you get these?" She looked down. "Grandma showed me how to sit right." She held my arm. Ice formed in Callum's stomach. "Did it hurt when she did that?" Rory didn't answer immediately, and that told him everything. "Listen to me." He knelt in front of her. "No one gets to hurt you, not even Grandma. If anyone hurts you, you tell me. Immediately. Understand?" She nodded solemnly. "Promise." "Promise, Daddy." The doorbell rang, and Rory flinched. "Go on down. I'll be there in a few minutes." He kissed the top of her head and watched her go, his mind already calculating next steps. He'd been letting too much slide for too long. "Callum, there you are." Vivica's voice cut through the kitchen like a surgical instrument. She didn't rise from her seat at the table, where she was supervising Rory's breakfast. "I was just telling Aurora about proper posture." "Morning, Vivica." He kept his greeting neutral as he poured another coffee. He'd learned long ago that showing weakness around his mother-in-law was like bleeding in shark-infested waters. Vivica Stroud sat ramrod straight, her silver blonde hair pulled into a tight chignon. At 58, she still commanded attention with her sharp features and expensive clothes. She watched Rory cut her fruit with an eagle's intensity. "Smaller pieces, Aurora." Her voice was clipped. "Ladies don't shovel food." Callum noticed how Rory's hands trembled slightly as she tried to cut the melon into tiny, precise pieces. "She's doing fine," he said, sliding into the chair beside his daughter. "Aren't you, kiddo?" Vivica's eyes narrowed. "Nickname's Stunt Proper Development, Callum. We discussed this." Repeatedly, he agreed, making no promise to stop. Tessa entered, car keys in hand. "Mother, thanks for watching Aurora today. The Simpson account needs my personal touch." "Of course, dear." Vivica smiled at her daughter, the only person who ever received her genuine warmth. "I can take off work," Callum offered. "Take Rory to the park instead." "Nonsense." Vivica cut in before Tessa could respond. "You have your computer business. Aurora and I will have a productive day. Won't we, dear?" She directed the last part at Rory, who nodded mechanically. "It's cybersecurity for government contracts, Vivica, not a computer business." Callum kept his tone even, though the deliberate diminishing of his successful work, after years of building his skills, was another of her tactics. "Fascinating." Vivica waved her hand dismissively. "Tessa mentioned you're up for promotion. That would certainly help with Aurora's education fund." The implication that he couldn't provide adequately hung in the air. Callum looked at Tessa, who avoided his gaze. "We're doing just fine," he said. "Rory's college fund is on track." "Aurora," Vivica corrected. "Such a beautiful name. Ashamed to butcher it." Callum stood, ruffling Rory's hair as he did. "I'm about to get ready for work. Be good, kiddo." As he left, he heard Vivica's low murmur. "Your father never did learn proper manners. But you will, won't you, Aurora?" Upstairs, Callum leaned against the bathroom sink, staring at his reflection. The disciplined face that looked back at him, still military short hair. Eyes that had seen too much too young revealed nothing of the calculations running behind them. The bruises on Rory's arm. The way she flinched at loud noises lately. The nightmares. Something had to change. Soon, 3 days later, Callum sat at his desk, scanning security protocols for a client when his phone vibrated. Tessa, taking Rory to Salem Center for Girls' Day. Mother's idea. Don't wait up. A vague unease settled over him. Tessa rarely took Rory anywhere without prodding. And Girls' Day had Vivica written all over it. He typed back, "What time will you be home?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then late. "Mother wants to do dinner after." Callum considered insisting on joining them, but stopped himself. Picking battles was a strategic game in his household. And lately, he'd been collecting evidence, not starting fights. Have fun. Tell Rory I love her. And no response came. The unease followed him through the day, distracting him during meetings, nagging at him as he drove home. The house felt wrong when he entered, too quiet, too still. He checked his phone. 7:30. No messages. By 9, the silence from Tessa felt deliberate. He called. It went to voicemail. 8:59:45. His phone finally rang. Tessa's name flashed on the screen. "Where are you?" he asked immediately. "Callum." Her voice sounded tight, controlled. "Something's happened." His blood turned to ice. "Where's Rory?" "We can't find her." The words were clipped, rehearsed. "Mother and I were playing hide and seek with her at the mall. She wandered off." Hide and seek. Callum was already grabbing his keys. "At the mall? What the hell, Tessa?" "Mother thought it would be fun." Her voice hardened. "We've called security. They're checking the exits." "How long has she been missing?" Callum demanded, starting his car at a pause. "About an hour." "An hour? And you just calling me now?" Rage mingled with terror as he peeled out of the driveway. "We thought we'd find her quickly." Tessa's voice took on a defensive edge. "Mother said not to worry you unnecessarily. I'm on my way. Call the police if you haven't already." He hung up before she could respond. The drive to Salem Center took 20 agonizing minutes. By the time Callum pulled into the parking lot, 2 police cruisers were already there, lights flashing silently in the night. Inside, he found Tessa and Vivica sitting with mall security and a uniformed officer. Tessa's makeup was still perfect. Vivica looked annoyed more than worried. "Callum." Tessa stood, making a show of relief. "They're searching the whole mall. Tell me exactly what happened," he demanded, ignoring the officer's raised eyebrow at his tone. "As I was telling the officer," We were playing a little game. Hide and seek. Tessa's voice had the practiced smoothness of someone reciting lines. Aurora was so excited. Rory hates hide and seek, Callum interrupted. She's been afraid of hiding places since she was 4. Tessa's eyes narrowed slightly. That's not true. She was having fun. Aurora seemed quite engaged. Vivica added, her voice cool. But she's always been a willful child. Probably thought it would be amusing to give us a real scare. The officer, a young man with a buzz cut, looked between them. Sir, we're doing a systematic search. We've got camera footage being pulled now. Show me where you last saw her, Callum said, barely containing his rage. They walked to the food court. Tessa pointed to a play area near the restrooms. She was supposed to hide while we counted. When we came looking, she was gone. Callum scanned the area, noting each exit point, each hiding place. His military training kicked in, automatically assessing terrain, calculating possibilities. Have you checked the bathroom? Of course we have. Vivica snapped. Do you think we're incompetent? A security guard approached, holding something small in his hand. Found this near the south maintenance exit. He held up a tiny denim jacket with rainbow patches, the one Callum had bought Rory for her birthday. That's hers. His voice came out strangled. That's Rory's jacket. The officer took it, examining the exit door nearby. This leads to a service corridor. Employees only, but the alarm's been disabled. Someone took her. The certainty in Callum's voice made everyone turn. Rory wouldn't go through a dark door willingly. She's afraid of the dark. Don't be dramatic, Callum, Vivica said sharply. She probably just wandered off. Children do that when they're not properly disciplined. The look he gave her could have frozen fire. My daughter didn't wander off, and she's never lacked for discipline. Sir, the officer cut in. We don't have evidence of abduction yet. Let's not jump to conclusions. But Callum wasn't listening anymore. He was watching Tessa, who kept checking her watch, and Vivica, whose annoyance seemed to outweigh her concern. The pieces didn't fit. Their story didn't fit. As more officers arrived and the search expanded, Callum stood apart, watching his wife and mother-in-law. Their posture, their expressions, the way they answered questions, everything screamed wrong. An older officer approached him. Mr. Rhodes? I'm Detective Morrow. We're bringing in K9 units and reaching out to neighboring businesses for their security footage. My daughter didn't wander off, Callum said firmly, and she wouldn't go with a stranger. Something else happened here. The detective studied him. We're exploring all possibilities. In the meantime, I need to ask, is there anyone who might want to hurt you or your family? Any threats at work? Custody disputes? No threats, Callum answered. Then more quietly, but my wife and I have had difficulties. She's threatened to take Rory before. The detective made a note. Has her daughter ever mentioned anyone making her uncomfortable? Teachers, family friends, relatives? Callum's eyes drifted to Vivica, who was now giving a statement to another officer, her face arranged in a mask of appropriate concern. My mother-in-law, he said quietly. Rory's been afraid of her recently, and I found bruises on her arm this week. Something shifted in the detective's expression. I see. We'll look into everything, Mr. Rhodes. In the meantime, try to stay positive. Most missing children are found quickly. But as the night dragged into early morning, with search teams combing the mall and surrounding areas, Callum's certainty grew. This wasn't a lost child. This was something calculated, something deliberate, and somehow he knew Tessa and Vivica were at the center of it. 3 days passed. 3 days of search parties, news reports, and Rory's picture plastered across the city. 3 days of Tessa playing the distraught mother for the cameras while Vivica managed everything with cold efficiency. 3 days of Callum barely sleeping, barely eating, watching his wife and mother-in-law for any slip, any crack in their performance. He sat in their living room, now a makeshift command center for the search. Volunteers came and went. The police called with updates that weren't updates at all. And through it all, a terrible certainty grew in Callum's gut. We should try to rest, Tessa said, sitting beside him on the couch. She'd changed from her designer clothes to jeans and a simple sweater, a costume for the role of worried mother. The police said they'd call if anything changes. How can you rest? Callum asked, not bothering to hide his suspicion anymore. Our daughter is missing. Don't you think I know that? Her eyes flashed with what looked like genuine anger. But falling apart won't help find her. You haven't fallen apart at all, have you? He studied her face. 3 days, and I haven't seen you cry once when the cameras aren't around. Tessa stood. Not everyone processes grief the same way. You should know that with your background. This isn't about processing grief. Callum's voice was dangerously quiet. This is about you knowing something you're not telling me. You're being paranoid. She moved toward the kitchen. I'm making tea. Do you want some? No. He watched her go, then pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found the number he wanted. Boone Keller answered on the second ring. Callum, any news? Nothing useful. Callum lowered his voice. I need to see you. Not here. My shop. Whenever you can get away. I've been looking at those mall blueprints you asked for. I'll be there in an hour. Callum ended the call, feeling the first faint stirring of hope in days. Boone had been his rock since they'd served together, the one person he trusted without reservation. When Vivica entered from the back door, Callum was gathering his keys and jacket. Going somewhere, she asked, her tone suggesting he had no right to leave. Fresh air, he answered shortly. I can't sit here doing nothing. Detective Morrow called, she said, ignoring his response. They want to interview you again. Something about your military background. The emphasis she placed on those words made his hackles rise. What about it? Well, Vivica settled into an armchair, smoothing her slacks. They asked quite a lot about your PTSD, whether you've ever been violent. Tessa felt obligated to tell them about that incident last year. The trap was so obvious Callum almost laughed. You mean when I had a nightmare? When I woke up disoriented and knocked over a lamp? Tessa said you were difficult to calm down. Vivica's eyes were cold. She feared for Aurora's safety. That's convenient timing, Callum replied evenly. Painting me as unstable right when Rory goes missing. No one's painting you as anything, Callum. Her smile never reached her eyes. But stress affects people differently. The police need to understand all family dynamics. I'm sure you've given them a complete picture. He headed for the door, not trusting himself to say more. Callum, Vivica called after him. They're just doing their job. If Aurora wandered off, it's no one's fault. Children can be so impulsive. So independent. He turned back, struck by her choice of words. Is that what happened? She wandered off? Or was she taken by a stranger? Your story keeps changing, Vivica. For a split second, something like calculation passed across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by practiced concern. I'm just saying that blame isn't helpful. Aurora will turn up, and when she does, she'll need stability. Without another word, Callum left, the pieces in his mind starting to form a pattern he couldn't yet fully see, but one that filled him with a cold, focused rage. A Boone survivalist shop sat on the edge of Salem, a plain brick building with a simple sign, Keller's Gear and Supply. Inside, past the displays of camping equipment and emergency rations, Boone waited in his back office, T-42. Boone Keller still carried himself with military precision, though his beard and flannel shirt gave him the look of a mountain man. He stood when Callum entered, offering a firm embrace. You look like hell, he said plainly. Feel worse. Callum sank into a chair across from Boone's cluttered desk. The police are useless. They're treating it like a custody situation. Boone raised an eyebrow. Because of Tessa's statements? She's laying groundwork, making me sound unstable. Callum rubbed his face. And something's off about the whole mall story. Rory hates hide and seek, hates the dark. No way she goes through a service door voluntarily. Could be a genuine abduction, Boone suggested, though his tone said he didn't believe it. With no witnesses? In a crowded mall? Callum shook his head. And Tessa waited an hour to call me. An hour, Boone. What's your gut telling you? Callum met his friend's eyes. That they planned this. Tessa and Vivica. I don't know why, but they wanted Rory gone. Boone leaned back, his expression grim. That's a hell of an accusation. But I can't say I'm surprised. Never trusted Tessa, not from day one. And her mother, he shook his head. Snake eyes, man. Always thought that woman had snake eyes. The validation loosened something in Callum's chest. For days, People have been treating him like he was irrational, paranoid. But Boone saw it too. Remember when you first brought Tessa around? Boone continued. All charm, all smiles. Then her mother got involved, and suddenly you're moving to her neighborhood, taking the job her mother's friend recommended, playing by their rules. I was trying to make it work, Callum said, the old defensiveness rising. After my childhood, you wanted stability? I get it. Boone leaned forward. But Callum, think about what's happened since. The isolation from your friends. The constant criticism. The way they treated Rory. A memory surfaced Tessa during their last big fight about custody arrangements, her voice cold. If anything happened, you'd be the one they'd blame. No one would believe your side. At the time, he'd taken it as a threat about divorce. Now it sounded like foreshadowing. I need to find her, Boone. Callum's voice cracked. If they did something to her, we'll find her, Boone said firmly. I called in some favors. Got those mall security videos the police are dragging their feet on. He turned his laptop toward Callum. Look at this. Camera 32, near the service exit. The grainy footage showed Tessa and Vivica standing near the food court. Tessa checked her watch repeatedly. Vivica kept looking toward the service corridor. Now watch, Boone said, pointing to the timestamp. 7:42 p.m. This guy in the baseball cap. See how he comes from a service door, nods at Vivica, then leaves? Sure enough, a man in nondescript clothes walked past, making brief eye contact with Vivica. Could be nothing, Boone admitted. But 10 minutes later, he switched to another camera view. Vivica heads down that same corridor. Alone. Comes back 3 minutes later without Rory. Where's Tessa during this? Creating an alibi. She's on camera at the customer service desk, looking worried, asking questions. Callum stared at the screen, ice forming in his veins. They handed her off to someone. That's my guess. But here's where it gets interesting. Boone pulled out a manila folder. Yesterday, I went to your house to drop off food. Tessa wasn't there, but Vivica was. Left her purse unattended while she took a call. He slid a photocopied receipt across the desk. Found this in her wallet. Gas station receipt from Opal Creek, dated day after Rory disappeared. Callum studied it. Opal Creek's what, 2 hours from here? In the mountains? Boone nodded. Rural area. Lots of cabins, not many people. Perfect place to hide someone. For the first time in days, Callum felt a surge of genuine hope. We need to go there. Already mapped it. Boone pulled out a detailed topographical chart. But Callum, before we do this, you need to be prepared. For whatever we find, the unspoken possibility hung between them. Rory's alive. Callum's voice left no room for doubt. I'd feel it if she wasn't. And when I find her, Tessa and Vivica will pay. For every second of fear they've caused her. Boone studied his friend's face. I've known you 20 years, man. Seen you in combat. Seen you in crisis. Never seen this look before. What look? The one that says you're not just hunting for Rory. You're hunting them. Callum didn't deny it. Are you with me? Till the end. Boone answered without hesitation. We leave at dawn. That night, Callum returned home to find a young officer waiting in his living room. The man stood when Callum entered, offering his hand. Mr. Rhodes? Officer Jalen Creek. I've been assigned as your family liaison. Creek was younger than Callum expected, maybe late 20s, with an earnest face and watchful eyes. Tessa sat on the couch, playing the grieving mother with practiced precision. The department wants to make sure you're kept up to date, Creek explained, and to have someone you can contact directly with concerns. Any new leads? Callum asked, ignoring Tessa's performance. Nothing concrete yet. Creek's eyes flicked briefly to Tessa, then back to Callum. But I'd like to go over the timeline again, if you don't mind. Something in the young officer's manner caught Callum's attention. There was a carefulness there, a deliberate neutrality that suggested more than routine follow-up. Of course. Callum gestured to the kitchen. Let's talk in there. Once they were alone, Creek's demeanor shifted subtly. He spoke more quietly, his eyes on the doorway. Mr. Rhodes, this is off the record, but I've been looking into some background that doesn't add up. Callum tensed. What kind of background? Your mother-in-law. Creek pulled out a small notepad. There's something in her history that got sealed. Something from before your wife was born. What are you saying? Creek hesitated. It's complicated. Juvenile records are sealed for a reason. But I have a contact who remembers the case. Vivica Stroud had another child before your wife. A little boy about 3 years old. The air seemed to thicken. What happened to him? He disappeared. Creek's voice dropped even lower. Same circumstances, supposedly wandered off during a game. They never found him. The kitchen seemed to tilt around Callum. And nobody connected this. Nobody saw the pattern. It was 40 years ago, different state. And the records were sealed when Vivica was still a minor herself. Creek looked troubled. I only found it because I was looking specifically at family history. Most of the department is focused on the mall footage or... He trailed off. Or investigating me, Callum finished. Because Tess has been painting me as unstable. Creek didn't confirm or deny, but his expression was answer enough. Look, Mr. Rhodes, I'm not supposed to have a theory this early, but something about your wife and mother-in-law doesn't sit right with me. The way they talk about Aurora, it's like they're reading from script. Relief washed through Callum, someone else who saw it. Someone official. Officer Creek, I need to show you something. He started to reach for his phone to show the gas station receipt when Tessa appeared in the doorway. Everything all right in here. Her voice was honey over steel. Vivica just called. She's on her way back from the volunteer center. Creek straightened, his professional mask sliding back into place. Just clarifying some timeline details, Mrs. Rhodes. Standard procedure. Of course. Tessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. Would you like coffee? It's a cold night for police work. Rain check, ma'am. I should get back to the station. Creek gathered his notes, then turned to Callum. Call me directly if you think of anything else, Mr. Rhodes. Any time, day or night. After Creek left, Tessa regarded Callum with cool suspicion. What were you two discussing that needed privacy? The investigation. Callum met her gaze steadily. Where were you today, Tessa? When I called, you didn't answer. Meeting with the counselor. The one Detective Morrow recommended. Her voice softened to the practiced concern she used when others might overhear. He said your anger is normal, that you might lash out, look for someone to blame. Is that what you're worried about? Then I'll blame you. He stepped closer. Why would I do that, Tessa? Unless there's something you're not telling me. For an instant, her mask slipped. Something calculating and cold looked out from behind her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by wounded innocence. How can you say that? Our daughter is missing, and you're treating me like a suspect. Her voice cracked on cue. I thought we'd face this together. So did I. Callum moved past her toward the stairs. But we seem to have different ideas about what happened to Rory. What's that supposed to mean? The pretense of hurt was gone now, replaced by wariness. Callum paused on the stairs. It means I'm done playing along, Tessa. I'm going to find our daughter. And when I do, the truth comes out. All of it. He left her standing in the hallway, her face a study in calculation and fury. Early the next morning, Callum slipped out before Tessa woke. He met Boone at the shop, and they loaded gear into Boone's truck camping equipment, first aid supplies, and items Callum didn't question but recognize from their military days. Tools for extraction operations. The drive to Opal Creek took just under 2 hours, the city giving way to forested mountains and scattered rural properties. The gas station from Vivica's receipt sat at a crossroads, a weathered building with 2 ancient pumps. Inside, a gray-haired man looked up from his newspaper as they entered. Help you fellas? Callum placed a photo of Rory on the counter. My daughter. Have you seen her? Maybe with an older woman, well-dressed, about a week ago. The man studied the picture, then Callum's face. You police. I'm her father, Callum said simply. She's missing. Something in his voice must have convinced the man, who nodded slowly. Yeah, I remember. Little thing with curly hair. Crying real quiet-like. The woman said she was having a tantrum. Callum's heart hammered against his ribs. Was Rory hurt? Did she say anything? Kept asking for her daddy. The man frowned. Woman called herself Mrs. Bennett. Said they were going to their cabin to meet up with family. Seemed off, but ain't my business to question folks. Did she say where this cabin was? Boone asked. Nope, but they headed up toward Eagle Ridge. He pointed to a forested area on a local map taped to the wall. Lots of private cabins up that way. Most empty this time of year. Callum memorized the route. Thank you. If they come back through, I'll call the number on that missing poster. The man looked troubled now. That woman really her grandmother? Didn't seem right, the way that child was crying. No, Callum said grimly. She's not her grandmother. Not in any way that matters. Back in the truck, Boone studied the map. Eagle Ridge has about 40 seasonal cabins spread over 10 square miles. We can't search them all. We won't need to. Callum pulled out his phone. Rory has been teaching herself to draw. Trees, animals, houses. She draws the same red cottage over and over, says it's where fairies live. He showed Boone a child's drawing of a small red house with a distinctive stone chimney. When I asked where she saw it, she said in the pictures. I thought she meant a book, but now I'm wondering if Tessa or Vivica showed her photos of a cabin they planned to take her to. Boone's eyes widened. You think they prepped her? Made her familiar with the place? Exactly. Callum zoomed in on the satellite view of Eagle Ridge. Look for a red cabin, probably isolated. Vivica wouldn't risk close neighbors. They drove slowly along the mountain roads, checking each turnoff. Most cabins were hidden from the main road, requiring careful exploration of unmarked driveways. That'd be why mid-afternoon. They'd checked 20 properties with no success. As the light began to fade, Boone pointed to a narrow dirt track half hidden by fir trees. Last one on this stretch. After this, we need to head back, regroup. The rutted track wound through thick forest for nearly a mile before opening into a small clearing. And there, nestled against the tree lean, stood a red cabin with a stone chimney. Callum was out of the truck before Boone fully stopped, moving silently toward the building. No car in the driveway. No smoke from the chimney. The place had the still feel of emptiness. They circled the perimeter cautiously. The windows were dark, curtains drawn. A small bicycle leaned against the porch new, with training wheels. Rory sighs. Back door, Boone whispered, pointing to a kitchen entrance. Looks jimmied already. The lock had indeed been forced, recently enough that with splinters still looked fresh. Inside, the cabin was cold and silent, but showed clear signs of recent occupation. Dishes in the sink. A child-sized jacket thrown over a chair. A coloring book open on the coffee table. Rory was here. Callum's voice was thick. He picked up the jacket, bringing it to his face. It smelled of his daughter's shampoo. Boone checked the bedrooms. 2 beds used. Adult and child. But they left in a hurry. Drawers open, clothes missing. Callum moved through the space like a ghost, touching toys, books, a half-eaten bowl of cereal gone stale. Then he spotted a small pink bead on the floor near the sofa. He picked it up, recognition hitting him like a physical blow. This is from Rory's bracelet, the one I gave her for her birthday. He closed his fist around it. She was here, Boone. Alive. Recently. Check this out. Boone called from a small desk in the corner. He held up a notebook filled with childish handwriting. Looks like someone was making her practice writing. Same sentence, over and over. Callum read the page, fury building with each repetition. I must be stronger. I must not cry for Daddy. I must be stronger. Vivica's handwriting for the example. He seethed. I recognize it. There's more. Boone pointed to a calendar hanging on the wall. Dates crossed off methodically until 3 days ago. The next date had been circled in red. They kept her here almost a week, Callum said, understanding dawning. Then something spooked them. They left in a hurry. Question is, where did they take her? Boone began searching more systematically, checking drawers and cabinets. And who broke in before us? Callum froze, a new possibility occurring to him. What if Rory got away? What if she ran, and that's why they left in such a rush? The hope in his voice was fragile, desperate. Boone didn't shoot it down outright, but his expression was cautious. Possible. But where would she go? We're miles from anywhere, and it was freezing last night. Callum was already pulling out his phone. Officer Creek. He believed me. Maybe he found something, came up here. But when he tried to call, there was no signal. We need to get back to town. Now, if Rory escaped, she's out there somewhere. And if Vivica and Tessa are looking for her too. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Back in Salem, Callum's first call was to Officer Creek, who agreed to meet them at a coffee shop away from the police station. You went to Eagle Ridge without telling me. Creek looked both impressed and alarmed. That's a major breach of protocol. Did you know about the cabin? Callum demanded. Creek shook his head. No, but I've been digging. Found something interesting about your mother-in-law's finances. He slid a paper across the table. Vivica Stroud opened a new account 3 months ago. Large cash deposits, followed by a withdrawal of $50,000 the day before your daughter disappeared. Boone whistled low. That's not vacation money. Exactly. Creek leaned forward. And I talked to one of your neighbors. So they saw Vivica loading suitcases into her car at 5 a.m. the morning after Aurora went missing, when she was supposedly at the volunteer center. Callum absorbed this, pieces clicking into place. They planned to keep Rory at the cabin temporarily. The circle on the calendar, that was when they intended to move her. Permanently. Move her where? Creek asked. I don't know, but I think someone was paying them. The thought made him physically ill. The question is, did Rory escape? Or did they move her ahead of schedule? Creek's expression turned grim. There's another possibility. A highway patrol officer found a child wandering on Route 22 near Opal Creek 2 days ago. Female, approximately 6 years old. No ID. Callum's heart stopped. Why wasn't I told? Because she didn't match Aurora's description. This child had short, dyed black hair. And she's not speaking trauma response, the doctors think. Creek hesitated. She's at Salem Memorial. Child Services has her. I need to see her. Callum was already standing. Now, I can't officially authorize that, Creek said, but handed over a business card with a name scribbled on the back. Ask for Dr. Reeves. Tell her I sent you. Unofficially, at Salem Memorial, Dr. Reeves, a brisk woman in her 50s, led Callum to a quiet room in the pediatric ward. She's not speaking, Dr. Reeves explained softly. No physical injuries beyond some scrapes and mild hypothermia, but significant emotional trauma. Has anyone claimed her? Callum asked. No, and we've had her picture on the news for 24 hours. Dr. Reeves gave him a searching look. Officer Creek said you might know her. I hope so, was all Callum could manage. The room was softly lit, with cheerful paintings of animals on the walls. In a child-sized chair by the window sat a small figure, her back to the door. Her hair was choppy, dyed an uneven black that didn't suit her pale skin. Callum approached slowly, heart in his throat. Rory, he said gently. The child stiffened but didn't turn. Rory, he tried again. It's Daddy. Slowly, so slowly, she turned. And despite the hair, despite the haunted look in her eyes, Callum knew his daughter instantly. Oh, kiddo, his voice broke. I found you. For a moment, she just stared, as if she couldn't believe he was real. Then, with a small cry, she launched herself into his arms. Her body shook with silent sobs as he held her, his own tears falling into her badly dyed hair. I've got you, he whispered. You're safe now. I'm never letting you go again. He felt her small hands clutch at his shirt, felt her face press into his neck. The relief was so overwhelming it nearly took his legs out from under him. Dr. Reeves watched from the doorway, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. Is this your daughter? She asked, though the answer was obvious. Yes, Callum said, not loosening his hold. This is Aurora Rhodes, my daughter who was reported missing 8 days ago. The doctor's eyebrows rose, but her hair was dyed to change her appearance. Callum finally set Rory down, though she clung to his hand. She was abducted, not lost. Dr. Reeves' face hardened with understanding. I'll call Officer Creek, and we'll need to document everything for the investigation. Callum nodded, his focus entirely on Rory. He knelt to her level. Kiddo, can you tell me what happened? How did you get away? Rory still didn't speak, but she made a running motion with her fingers. You ran away? Callum asked gently. She nodded, then pointed to the window. Through a window. Another nod. That was very brave, Rory. So brave. She touched her hair, her expression distressed. Grandma did that. Callum guessed. Rory nodded vigorously. It's okay. It'll grow back. The real you is still there. She threw her arms around his neck again, and Callum felt something press into his hand. A small, folded paper. When he carefully opened it, He found a child's drawing of the red cabin with 3 figures, a tall woman, a younger woman, and a child with tears on her face. You kept drawing, he whispered, pride swelling in his chest. Just like I taught you. Leave a record when you're afraid. Rory pointed to the tall figure, then made a mean face, her fingers curved like claws. Grandma was mean to you. Callum kept his voice even, though rage boiled beneath the surface. Rory nodded, then pointed to the middle figure. Mom. Another nod, followed by a cold expression that chilled Callum to the bone. No 6-year-old should know how to make a face like that. They hurt you. It wasn't a question. Rory touched her arm where the bruises had been, then her cheek. But then she did something unexpected. She straightened her small shoulders and pointed to her head, then her heart. They try to make you hard, Callum translated. Like them. His daughter's solemn nod nearly broke him. But beneath the fury and grief, a cold determination formed. Tessa and Vivica had tried to break his daughter's spirit. They had failed, and now they would pay .8s if, sensing his thoughts, Dr. Reeves touched his shoulder. Officer Creek is on his way. He's bringing a child advocate and detective. Thank you. Callum lifted Rory into his arms, unwilling to break contact even for a moment. I need to make one more call. Stepping into the hallway with Rory still clinging to him, he called Boone. I found her, he said simply. She's safe. Boone's exhale was audible. Thank God. Is she hurt? Not physically, but they. He trailed off, aware of Rory listening. We'll talk when you get here. And Boone, call that reporter who's been asking questions. Leah Fremont. Tell her I'm ready to talk. As he hung up, a new voice came from down the hall. Mr. Rhodes? A woman in her early 30s approached, press badge visible on her jacket. Her sharp eyes took in the scene. Callum holding the child with dyed black hair, and understanding dawned on her face. Leah Fremont, Willamette Valley News. She studied him with surprising intensity. Is that Aurora? How did you find us? Callum asked, automatically shielding Rory from the journalist's gaze. I've been following your case. Talked to Officer Creek yesterday. She lowered her voice. And I've been investigating your mother-in-law for weeks. Even before Aurora went missing. That got Callum's attention. Why? Financial irregularities. Connections to some questionable people. Leah's eyes darted to Rory, then back to Callum. Things I couldn't publish without more evidence. Until now, Callum considered the woman before him. She had intelligent eyes and a determined set to her jaw. The kind of person who didn't let go once they had hold of something. Why should I trust you? He asked bluntly. Because I've been watching your wife and mother-in-law play grieving family for the cameras while sabotaging the search behind the scenes. Leah's voice hardened. And because I think there are more children involved than just Aurora. The implication hung in the air. Vivica's history, the missing son, the financial transactions, the growing certainty that this wasn't an isolated incident. We should talk, Callum said finally. After the police finish here. Leah nodded. I'll wait. And Mr. Rhodes? I'm glad you found her. As she walked away, Callum felt Rory stir in his arms. She pointed at Leah's retreating figure, then gave him a small nod. You think we could trust her? He asked softly. Rory nodded again, more firmly this time. Okay then, we trust her. Callum kissed his daughter's forehead. Together, we're going to make sure Grandma and Mom can never hurt anyone again. Rory wrapped her arms tighter around his neck, and for the first time since he'd found her, her body relaxed against his. She was safe. She was found, and now, the reckoning would begin. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of police interviews, medical examinations, and carefully orchestrated deception on the advice of Detective Morrow brought in by Officer Creek. Once the true circumstances of Rory's disappearance became clear, Callum agreed to keep her recovery secret for 72 hours. Just long enough to build a case, to set a trap. If your wife and mother-in-law learn we've found Aurora, they'll lawyer up immediately. Morrow explained in a private conference room at the hospital. We need their unguarded reactions, their mistakes. We need them to think they're still in control. So while Rory remained in protective custody at the hospital under a false name, Callum returned home to play the part of the desperate, increasingly unhinged father. IT was the hardest performance of his life. The police are scaling back the search, he told Tessa that evening, watching her face for any reaction. They're talking about moving to recovery operations instead of rescue. Tessa arranged her features into appropriate horror. They can't give up. She's out there somewhere. Is she, Tessa? Callum let some of his genuine rage slip through. Or do you know exactly where she is? What are you saying? Her eyes narrowed. That I had something to do with this? My own daughter. I'm saying you've lied from the beginning. The hide-and-seek game? Rory hates hide-and-seek. You know that. People forget things when they're traumatized, Callum. Her voice took on a rehearsed quality. The therapist said your anger is a natural reaction, but you can't direct it at me. We need to support each other. He wanted to tell her then that Rory was found, that she remembered everything, that her pathetic act wasn't fooling anyone anymore. But he held back, thinking of Morrow's warning and Rory's bruised arms. Where's your mother? He asked instead. At her hotel. The stress was too much for her here. Tessa moved toward the kitchen, clearly wanting to end the conversation. I'm going to make dinner. You should eat something. Not hungry. Callum headed for the stairs. I'm going to Rory's room, to keep looking through her things for any clue we missed. In the sanctuary of his daughter's bedroom, Callum finally let his mask drop. He sat on her small bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and books, and tried to quiet the rage that threatened to consume him. His phone buzzed with a text from Leah Fremont. Got access to Vivica's financial records. Massive transfers to offshore account last 3 months. Meeting with my source tomorrow. Can you be there? He texted back, time and place. Another text came through, this one from Boone, hospital secure. Our girl's doing well, drawing lots of pictures. The knowledge that Rory was safe, that she was already beginning to heal, steadied him, allowed him to think clearly about what needed to happen next. Callum took a small recorder from his pocket provided by Detective Morrow and activated it. Then he went downstairs to have dinner with his wife. The next morning, Callum met Leah and her source at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. The source turned out to be a woman in her early 40s with anxious eyes and expensive clothes. This is Miriam Blythe, Leah introduced. She and your wife grew up together. Miriam nervously twisted her wedding ring. I should have spoken up sooner. Before any of this happened. Spoken up about what? Callum asked. Vivica, the way she raised Tessa. Miriam's voice dropped. The things she taught her about parenting. Over the next hour, Miriam painted a disturbing picture of Tessa's childhood. Of Vivica's obsession with creating strength in children by subjecting them to isolation, fear, and emotional manipulation. She used to say that coddling children weakens them, Miriam recalled. That true strength comes from abandonment. She once told Tessa, if you want to make a lion, abandon the cub. Callum's blood ran cold, and Tessa believed this. Vivica's approval was everything to Tessa. Miriam looked down at her untouched coffee. If Vivica said the sky was green, Tessa would have defended it to her death. When did you first suspect something was wrong with Aurora? Leah asked gently. Last month. I visited for lunch, and Aurora seemed different, scared. When Vivica entered the room, she froze, and Tessa just watched, like she was studying how her daughter would react. Miriam shuddered. It reminded me of the psychological experiments Vivica used to talk about, the ones with rats and mazes. Did you know about the cabin? Callum asked. Miriam shook her head. Not specifically, but Vivica always talked about her testing grounds, places where she could conduct her lessons without interference. And you never reported any of this. Who would believe me? Miriam's eyes filled with tears. Vivica Stroud, respected community pillar? Tessa Rhodes, perfect mother? Against what my vague concerns based on conversations from decades ago. She wasn't wrong, Callum knew. Without Rory's testimony, without the evidence they gathered, it would have been her word against theirs. I need you to go on record, Leah said. Everything you've told us. It corroborates what we already have, but coming from a lifelong friend, it'll destroy my life, Miriam whispered. My standing in the community. My social circle. They tried to erase my daughter, Callum said, his voice level but intense. They dyed her hair, told her I didn't want her, left her alone in the dark to build character. Is your standing in the community worth more than that? Miriam met his eyes, and something shifted in her expression. "No," she said finally. "It's not. I'll go on record." As they left the coffee shop, Leah pulled Callum aside. "There's more. I found 2 other children, now adults, who were tested by Vivica over the years. Foster children who mysteriously returned to the system with behavioral issues after staying with her. She's been doing this for decades," Callum realized. "Using children as experiments. And getting paid for it." Leah's expression was grim. "I can't prove it yet, but I think she's connected to some kind of extreme child-rearing philosophy. People who believe children need to be broken to become extraordinary. Tell me you have enough for a story." "Almost." Leah checked her phone. "One more piece. I need Tessa on record. Something that shows her complicity." Callum thought for a moment. "I have an idea, but you'll need to be ready tomorrow night." The trap was set carefully, meticulously. First, Callum staged a public breakdown. At a press conference organized by the police, he appeared disheveled, desperate, a father losing hope, losing control. "Please," he begged the cameras, "if anyone has seen my daughter, I just want her back." No questions asked. The performance spread across local news, designed to give Tessa and Vivica a false sense of security, to make them believe their plan was working, that Callum was being systematically destroyed. Next came the invitation. "There's a vigil for Rory tomorrow night," Callum told Tessa that evening. "I can't face it. All those people, their pity. I'm with a Boons for a few hours. Probably for the best." Tessa agreed too quickly. "You haven't been yourself lately. I'll go to the vigil. Keep up appearances. Your mother should come too," Callum suggested, watching her closely. "Show family unity." Tessa's eyes flickered with calculation. "I'll ask her." The final piece, a carefully planted recording device in Vivica's hotel room, installed by Officer Creek during a routine follow-up interview. When Callum left the house the next evening, he drove halfway to Boone's shop, then doubled back, parked a block away, and waited. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, Vivica's car pulled into the driveway. She and Tessa disappeared inside, both dressed appropriately somber for the upcoming vigil. Neither noticed Leah Fremont's nondescript sedan parked across the street, recording equipment at the ready. Inside, the planted device captured everything. "The police contacted me again." Vivica's voice came through clearly on the receiver. "That young officer, Creek, asking about finances. What did you tell him?" Tessa sounded annoyed. "Nothing of consequence. But we need to accelerate our timeline. The Morgan couple is still willing to take her, but they want assurance she's been properly prepared. She ran away, mother. How exactly does that demonstrate proper preparation?" Tessa's voice held a rare edge of frustration. "A setback," Vivica dismissed, "but not insurmountable. Once we find her, we simply increase the isolation period. Extend the lessons. Children are remarkably adaptable." "And Callum? He's falling apart, but he's still looking, still asking questions." A pause, then Vivica's chilling response. "Men like Callum become dangerous when cornered. We may need to consider a more permanent solution to that problem." Listening from a car, Callum felt ice form in his veins. They weren't just talking about kidnapping Rory. They were discussing his murder. "We need to be careful," Tessa said, not objecting to the suggestion. "Make it look like suicide. With Rory gone, with his mental state, people would believe it." "Precisely." The grieving father, unable to cope. Vivica's voice was matter-of-fact. "Then we find Aurora, continue her training, and complete the transaction. The Morgans are offering $200,000, more than enough to start fresh somewhere else." "We wanted her to be strong," Tessa said, her voice taking on an almost dreamy quality. "Like you made me, tested in fire. And she will be," Vivica assured her, "once we deal with the immediate problems." The conversation continued, detailing plans to search the areas around the cabin, to recapture Rory before the police could find her, to stage Callum's suicide. Each word was recorded, each confession preserved. In the car with Leah, Callum listened with a cold, focused rage. "Is that enough?" he asked when the recording finally ended. Leah nodded, her face pale. "More than enough. Child trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, they'll never see daylight again." "Good." Callum checked his watch. Time for phase 2. The vigil for Rory was held at a local park, candlelight flickering across the faces of concerned community members. Tessa played her role perfectly, the devastated mother, supported by the stoic grandmother, both accepting condolences with appropriate grief. Cameras from local news stations captured it all, including the moment when Detective Morrow approached them, Officer Creek at his side. "Mrs. Rhodes? Mrs. Stroud? I need you both to come with me." Morrow's voice carried just enough for nearby attendees to hear. "Has something happened?" Tessa asked, a well-practiced tremble in her voice. "Have you found Aurora?" "Yes," Morrow said simply. "We have." The flicker of panic across both women's faces was subtle but unmistakable. "Thank God." Tessa recovered quickly. A hand pressed her heart. "Is she?" "She's alive," Morrow interrupted. "And she's been talking. A lot." All color drained from Vivica's face. "I don't understand. What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything, Mrs. Stroud. I'm stating facts." Morrow's voice hardened. "Aurora Rhodes was found 3 days ago. She identified both of you as her abductors. We have physical evidence, financial records, and multiple witnesses." The gathered crowd had fallen silent, phones recording as the scene unfolded. "This is absurd," Vivica snapped, her mask finally slipping. "Where is she? I demand to see her." "That won't be possible." Callum's voice cut through the night as he stepped forward from the shadows. "My daughter is safe, away from both of you, and she's never going to be subjected to your tests again." Tessa whirled to face him, shock and fury warring in her expression. "You, Vivica and Tessa Stroud," Morrow cut in formally, "you're under arrest for child endangerment, false reporting, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent." As the Miranda rights were recited, as cameras flashed and the crowd murmured in shock, Callum stood perfectly still, watching the women who had tried to destroy his family being led away in handcuffs. It wasn't over. There would be trials, testimony, the long process of justice. But in this moment, watching Vivica's cold fury and Tessa's calculating desperation as they realized their downfall, Callum felt the first real peace since Rory had disappeared. The monsters had been caged, and his daughter was coming home. The courtroom was packed on the final day of testimony. After weeks of evidence, of expert witnesses describing Vivica's psychological manipulation and Tessa's complicity, it was finally Callum's turn to speak. Rory sat in a special room, watching via closed-circuit television, supported by counselors and Boone. They decided together that she wouldn't testify in person. Her recorded statements, her drawings, and the physical evidence were enough. She didn't need to face her tormentors again. That on the stand, Callum spoke with controlled precision. He described finding the bruises on Rory's arms, his growing concern about Vivica's influence, the staged disappearance at the mall, and the frantic search that followed. "And when did you begin to suspect your wife and mother-in-law were involved?" the prosecutor asked. "From the beginning," Callum answered truthfully. "The story never made sense. Rory would never play hide-and-seek willingly. She's afraid of the dark, afraid of being separated from people she trusts. And they waited an hour to call me, an hour when my 6-year-old daughter was supposedly missing in a public place." "Objection," Tessa's attorney called. "Speculation." "Overruled," the judge responded. "The witness is stating his observations as a parent." "Mr. Rhodes," the prosecutor continued, "can you tell us about finding Aurora at the hospital?" Callum's voice remained steady, though the memory still shook him. "She'd escaped from the cabin through a window, ran through the woods until she reached a highway. An elderly couple found her walking along the road and took her to the hospital. They saw the missing person reports days later and called anonymously. And her appearance had been altered. Yes, her hair had been cut and dyed black. She was wearing clothes I'd never seen before. But I knew her immediately. Was Aurora able to tell you what happened during her captivity? Not verbally at first. The trauma had left her unable to speak. But she drew pictures." Callum gestured to the evidence displays. Pictures of the cabin, of Vivica and Tessa, of the lessons they forced on her. "What kind of lessons?" Callum's jaw tightened. "Isolation, being locked in dark rooms, being told I didn't want her anymore, being forced to write lines about becoming stronger and not crying for daddy. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Across the room, Tessa stared at him with cold hatred. Vivica sat beside her, face impassive, as if the proceedings were a minor inconvenience. And what was the purpose of these lessons, according to the evidence you discovered? To break her spirit, to make her adaptable for the people who were going to buy her. The words came out flat, controlled. Financial records show Vivica had arranged to sell my daughter to a couple called the Morgans for $200,000. Lies. Vivica suddenly shouted, her composure finally breaking. We were saving her, making her exceptional. You would have ruined her with your weakness, your coddling. Order. The judge banged his gavel. Mrs. Stroud, control yourself or you'll be removed from this courtroom. Tessa's attorney looked pained at the outburst, while Tessa herself had gone very still, her eyes fixed on some middle distance. Mr. Rhodes, the prosecutor continued after order was restored. In your own words, what do you believe would have happened to Aurora if she hadn't escaped? Callum met Vivica's gaze directly for the first time. She would have been sold to strangers, subjected to continued abuse, and raised to believe that cruelty equals strength. And I would have been murdered, made to look like a suicide, so no one would ever look for her again. His voice never wavered, never broke. The rage that had sustained him through weeks of investigation and testimony had refined itself into something colder, more precise. No further questions. The prosecutor said that Tessa's attorney declined to cross-examine, likely recognizing the danger of giving Callum more time to speak. Vivica's attorney attempted briefly to suggest that Callum's military background had made him paranoid, but quickly abandoned that line when Callum's responses remained measured and factual that in the end, the jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning with their verdict. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing came a week later. Tessa received 25 years. Vivica, with her history of child endangerment and the evidence of previous incidents, received 40 as they were led from the courtroom. Tessa finally broke her silence. Callum, she called, her voice a mixture of plead and demand. Tell Rory I love her, that I always loved her, that everything was for her own good. Callum didn't respond, didn't look back. There was nothing left to say to the woman who had believed breaking a child was the same as loving her. Outside, reporters gathered, microphones thrust toward him. Among them stood Leah Fremont, whose series of articles had blown the case wide open, revealing Vivica's connections to a fringe child-rearing philosophy that had damaged countless children over decades. Mr. Rhodes, one reporter called, "Do you have a statement about the verdict?" Callum paused, considering. Only this, my daughter is safe. She's healing, and the people who hurt her will never have access to another child again. That's all that matters. As the media throng pressed closer, Officer Creek, recently promoted to detective for his work on the case, appeared at Callum's side, helping clear a path through the crowd. Car's ready, Creek said quietly. Boone's waiting with Aurora at the park, like you arranged. Thank you. Callum meant it for more than just today. For believing me from the start, when no one else did. Creek nodded, understanding the deeper gratitude. Some things you just know in your gut. The way they talked about her. No real parent talks about their missing child like they were discussing a lost umbrella. Together, they navigated to the waiting car, leaving the courthouse and its justice behind. Spring had turned to early summer by the time the case finally closed. In a quiet park on the edge of Salem, Callum watched as Rory explored a playground, Boone following at a discreet distance. The changes in his daughter were both subtle and profound. The dye had grown out of her hair, dark curls returning to their natural state. She'd started speaking again 2 weeks after the trial ended, softly at first, then with growing confidence. The nightmares hadn't stopped completely, but they came less frequently now. And when they did, she knew she could come to his room, knew he would be there, awake and waiting. She's doing better, Leo observed, sitting beside him on the park bench. Her articles on the case had earned her a national award and a job offer from a major newspaper, which she'd turned down to stay in Salem and continue investigating Vivica's network. Day by day, Callum agreed. The therapist says she's remarkably resilient. Like her father, Leo watched as Rory conquered the monkey bars, Boone standing ready to catch her if needed. You never broke. Not once through this whole ordeal. I couldn't afford to. Callum's eyes never left his daughter. But don't mistake control for lack of feeling. There were moments I wanted to tear the world apart to find her. But you didn't. You built a case instead. Made sure they'd never walk free. Justice, not vengeance, Callum said quietly, though sometimes the line blurs. They sat in companionable silence, watching Rory play. After a while, Leah spoke again. The Morgans were arrested yesterday. In Idaho. Their operation went deeper than we thought. 5 other families involved. Good. The word came out hard-edged. Make sure they all go down. Count on it. Leah stood, gathering her notes. I should go. Deadline for the follow-up piece. As she turned to leave, she paused. You know, most people would be bitter after what you've been through. Would carry that rage forever. Callum considered this. I'm not bitter, he said finally, but I'll never forgive them. There's a difference. Bitterness consumes you. Consumes everything. But refusing to forgive? That's just memory. That's just making sure you never forget what people are capable of. Leah nodded, understanding. Take care of her, Callum. And yourself. After she left, Rory came running over, cheeks flushed with exertion and play. Daddy, did you see me? I went all the way across. I saw kiddo. He smiled, genuine and unguarded in a way he rarely allowed himself to be. You're getting stronger every day. Boone says I'm tough. She said it with pride, not fear. Not the warped toughness Vivica had tried to instill, but something healthier. Resilience. Self-confidence. You are, Callum agreed, pulling her into a hug. The strongest person I know. Boone joined them, his normally serious face relaxed. This kid's a natural, he declared. Should see her climbing trees. Like a squirrel. Rory giggled the sound, still miraculous, to Callum's ears after weeks of silence. Time to head home. Callum asked her. We could stop for ice cream on the way. Home was a new place now, a house across town, away from memories, away from neighbors who knew too much and stared too long. A fresh start. Rory nodded eagerly, then suddenly turned serious. Daddy, she said, her voice small but steady. They're never coming back, right? Mom and Grandma. Callum knelt to her level, making sure she could see the absolute certainty in his eyes. Never. They can never hurt you again. I promise. She studied his face, seeming to process this. Then, with the resilience that continually amazed him, she nodded once and took his hand. Okay, can I get chocolate and strawberry swirl? Anything you want. Callum stood, his daughter's small hand held securely in his. Ready, ready, she confirmed. As they walked toward the car, Rory looked up at him with clear eyes. Daddy, you came for me. The words were simple, but held the weight of absolute faith. I never stopped, Callum replied, his voice steady and true as a promise kept.